Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with knowledge partners NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, CEO of Boardroom Resources, and we're bringing you the show today from the NASDAQ market site here on Times Square. And we're going to talk today about board CEO relations. And joining me as my guest today is Sarah Meyerrose, who's the CEO, President, and board member of Civic Bank and Trust. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, TK.
It's great to see you again. So one of the things that is never listed sort of in the job description that we know ends up being a major part of a CEO's responsibilities is board CEO relations. You always have that concern of making sure that the communications are right, the information levels are correct, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So where we want to start, what we want to talk about first is sort of how does a CEO, A, get off on the right foot, and B, create this environment that creates a great relationship?
Well, TK, it seems to me that it's almost common sense, but not all of us remember those things when we get into those roles. And I start first with saying just communicate a lot. Listen to what your board has to say, ask a lot of questions, make sure that you're thinking about things the same way. There's just so many, I won't say hidden agendas, but everybody has their pain points and the things that they care most about. And as the CEO, you really need to know what those are and how they're thinking about them so that you can address them one way or the other. So just lots of open communication, lots of probing about why they feel that way, finding out sort of the history of the company. Maybe there's some history from the prior CEO that they did like or didn't like, and you're going to want to know that. I think the other thing is that it's so hard to remember sometimes is everybody in that room has an ego, including the CEO. And you have to get past that and say, we're all in this together. This is, we have to build sort of a team concept. We all want to pull the same direction, but we all have different roles. And I know you spend a lot of time with that, is really helping boards understand what the role of the board members are in the various committees, as well as the role of the CEO. So it comes down to really understanding what they want to know, what the board wants to know, what the CEO wants them to know, and then finding ways to communicate in language that is common for everyone. As a banker, we have our language just like every other industry has their language, and it's not necessarily something that other people know. So if you're using shorthand and there's a board member that doesn't know the shorthand, you're leaving that person out of the conversation.
I've always tried to advise CEOs that come into a situation where they've been recruited, sometimes internally, but certainly if it's somebody coming in from the outside, to make sure that they take time to ask the board what their expectations are.
Right.
And that is particularly true when you get to the committee chairs, because so much happens in the audit committee and the comp committee and the nom-gov committee these days that you really need to take the time to find out what people's expectations are. You can save a lot of heartache that way. Mm-hmm. Do you find that to be the case as well?
Absolutely. As you know, I've been in this role now for almost exactly 7 months, and I was recruited from the outside. And one of the things that I learned after I got there is that some of the other candidates, when asked the question, what's the most important thing, first thing that you would do if you came to work for us, some of the others answered by saying, well, I'll do whatever the board wants me to do. And you have to remember, they're not hiring the CEO to do their bidding. They're hiring the CEO to lead the company and lead management and they're there in advisory roles and roles of responsibility. So saying to a board that it's their responsibility to tell me what to do is really the wrong direction to go. It immediately gives them a lack of confidence in your ability to do the job that they're recruiting you for.
One of the things we always talk about, and I think is very important again for the board CEO relationships, is understanding where the board leadership is coming from, or if there is in fact board leadership. If sometimes there's setups where the CEO holds both titles, okay, and then there's a lead director. Well, is that lead director a true lead director? Are they serving in the role to provide leadership to the board? Is there somebody else on the board that ends up being the person that everybody looks to? Is there no leadership, which means that it falls back on the CEO to sort of be guiding the board along? That sort of understanding designation of how that works is really critical to building a great board CEO relationship long term.
Right, I totally agree. We have a great board, and but there are true leaders on the board, and there are others who look to that leader, and knowing that is very important. So if there's something that's difficult or controversial coming up, or not even difficult, but maybe a change that they wouldn't have seen, it's always advisable to talk to the leadership of the board ahead of time to make sure that the conversation goes in a productive direction.
And you're going to want that because when tough issues come up, you're going to want to prep ahead of board meetings, and
Sure.
It's good to know where the leadership lies.
And it's good to know if their concerns are the same as my concerns or the CEO's concerns.
Yeah. Another responsibility you had during your career, in fact, I think it was as early as last year, is you were the president of ION, the international network, the nonprofit association that worked to elevate women into influential positions on boards and on senior management. And when I am out and about in my board network, and excuse me, I've played a role in helping build diversity as well, but as I look around and see what's happening these days, I am seeing not only some number change for the first time, but an unbelievable attitude change about how we need to make our boards more diverse. What do you think has been the influencers that has sort of pushed this stagnant number to the point that now finally, boards are getting it and we're starting to see some activity in building more diverse boards?
First of all, I hope you're right. The numbers aren't really, at least as I see them, they're not showing up as robustly as we would like them to. We still only have, and we don't have this proxy season analyzed just yet. But as of 2014, as late as October, we still only had 19% women on the Fortune 500 boards and 13% on the Russell 3000. So it's still a relatively low numbers. But I'm encouraged by the fact that you've said that, and I've heard that other places, that the attitudes are changing a lot. And I personally think, and I think this shows up in all the studies that we do, that by turning the tables a little bit and working on the demand side, if you will, for diversity as opposed to the supply side. For so many years, many women's organizations were saying, well, we have to prepare women to be in the boardroom. We have to prepare them for this. We have to prepare them for that. And on the other hand, the demand side was saying it's so hard to find diverse candidates, not just gender diverse, but racially diverse and all that. And so the shift has been to really talk to the decision makers and say, you're missing this whole pool of candidates that's out there, and here's how you find them. Give them an easy way to do that. It's not the natural networking that used to go on for years. What it takes is really some little bit harder work to identify where those people are. And so I think that the focus on saying not only is this an important business imperative to have a diverse board, especially in the environment that we're in, but it's also very possible. And you don't want to, you're ignoring up to 50% of the workforce if you don't do that. The other number that I'd really like to see move a little bit faster is the executive officers in the publicly traded companies.
Which fuel
the board members, right. So in the Fortune 500, it's 15.5% gender women, and in the Russell 3000s, it's 13% still. So we've got to get that pipeline really moving before we're going to make any difference on the boards also.
Well, good news is that BlackRock, the largest investor, has sent out a letter to companies saying that diversity matters for them, and
Good.
there are some.
I did see that.
There will be some situations where they probably withhold votes if they think somebody is completely ignoring that. So, all good signs, and you know, like you said, you're a perfect example of a great candidate. You know, that has all the financial background,
so.
Yeah, all the background, and it is still untapped, you know, from
Right.
that perspective, and just sometimes have to look a little further. So, well, there's a question that we like to ask people that come into the show that relates to the future, and you're certainly familiar with all the changes and things that have happened in corporate governance, you know, along. And when you look at the trends that are happening in the boardroom, and you look out into the future, sort of what gives you concern about some of those trends? And then which trends in the boardroom sort of give you encouragement about what lies ahead for the future for American businesses?
Well, I think there's two things, and you can talk about them that come to mind anyway. One is the two spectrums of shareholder activism. As you know, if it becomes intrusive and for a company not to be able to make the decisions that the company needs to make for the good of the shareholders, then it's a damaging thing. And went through my mind as I was thinking through this a little bit, that you can't run a company by a committee. And if your committee is all of your shareholders, it's really going to be a problem. So there has to be some sort of way to make sure the shareholders have a voice, which I'm all for, but at the same time make sure that it's for the good of the order as opposed to some other agenda that might be there. So I think that's the one end that's a little bit concerning, is that goes too far, and it becomes detrimental to the other shareholders as opposed to helpful. But what I do think on the flip side, what's encouraging about that is, again, one of your guests talked a lot about this, more and more companies are getting out ahead of the issue and making sure that they're engaging their shareholders, they're asking for their opinion before it gets to a vote. It's kind of like we talked about earlier with your board. You don't want any surprises. So let them know what's going on, let them know if bad news is coming to the extent that you legally can. So I think that's one issue that both ends of the spectrum really make a difference. And then in banking especially, and probably in other organizations, the regulatory environment has gotten so tight, and the expectation of the board's role from the regulators is almost scary. Because they'll say, well, you, Mr. Board Chairman, need to know this, and you need to know that, and you need to manage this, and you need to manage the culture of the company. Well, that's just not possible for a board member to actually do that. And so while I, again, applaud having the board involved in a lot of things, they're the advisors, and they're not running the company. So when the regulators ask them to approve minute details in the company, it can become very disruptive and, again, counterproductive. So I'd say those are kind of the two things, the regulatory environment and then the shareholder activism, that both sides, again, there's both sides on each one of those issues.
Well, there's no question that banking is
highly
regulated, okay, and it has gotten to the extreme. And we both know that the directors can't, unless they were a former banker, which is, you certainly don't have many of those on boards. They're not going to know that business to the depth that the regulators expect. So hopefully, that we always see the pendulum swing too far and then work its way back a little bit. And I certainly hope that that's the case with the banks as well. But Sarah, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us as a guest today.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
And appreciate your comments, which I'm sure our audience has as well. And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week with a critical topic that will help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors, Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.